We're on to week 12 of the fantasy football season. We're going to have a full slate of games on Thanksgiving Day. You want to make sure you set your lineups nice and early and get the right wide receivers into those lineups. We're going to go game by game and tell you who you should start and who you should sit. Thankfully, there's some guys you just don't need to worry about. These are the must starts at wide receiver. Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, and, if he plays, Justin Jefferson. Before we get to those Thursday games, let me remind you that this is the perfect time to sign up for Underdog Fantasy, not just because you get another chance for our new customer special. This week it's Christian McCaffrey just getting 1 yard. That's basically a free pick for you. You combine that with any other pick you like and you can triple your money. But if you enter any pick'em from now until Thursday night at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, you have from now until then to have a chance to win as part of their Turkey Day 300K airdrop. What this means is that 3 lucky users will have a chance to win $100,000. That's right. They're putting cash into your account. So if you haven't tried Underdog yet, again, get that account. Just make sure you use promo code ENDGAME because that also gives you that 100% deposit match up to $100. Now that Thanksgiving Day slate begins with the Packers at the Lions. Tradition always dictates. Let's start with, I guess, maybe the leading receiver there in Green Bay nowadays is Jaden Reed, the rookie. We know he's talented. He's starting to come on. Is he a guy who's now viable for fantasy lineups?
I definitely think he's viable. I don't necessarily love this matchup for him. Green Bay, short week, having to go on the road, but he's got upside. He looks good, so I can put him in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not going to put him higher than like a flex option because this receiving core, as we'll see, has several options still. I will say I'm encouraged overall because Jordan Love looks a lot better, not just last week, but the last couple of weeks. But we got to remember they played the Chargers last week, and now they get to play the Lions on the road. So I would say, Reed, like you said, only start him if you need him. And then there's Romeo Doubs. You feel any different about him?
I kind of feel the same about Romeo Doubs almost every single week, kind of touchdown or bust. If he doesn't score, you're probably not going to get a lot. There's no teams on bye this week. I don't think you should need Romeo Doubs this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy I'm always going to prefer in a non-PPR league because his main appeal is touchdowns. And look, he's scored several times. They target him in the end zone, but the floor is still low. So risky flex also. Now, the guy who still gets a ton of targets in the end zone and finally connected on one was Christian Watson. Scored a touchdown, but really did nothing else. Is that enough to make you consider Christian Watson?
Nah, touchdown or bust. And he scored last week, great. He didn't bust. But the other weeks when he didn't score, he's busted. That's probably who he is. Again, no teams on bye this week. You shouldn't need Christian Watson. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, in this matchup, I'm not considering Christian Watson. It's not there. I don't know what the deal is, if it's Jordan Love or what. Yeah, he caught a touchdown. He only had 2 catches for 21 yards, and he was targeted 4 times. His catch rate is low. His efficiency is terrible. I'm just not doing it. Now, on the Lions side, of course, the Sun God is still leading your team to victories. Jameson Williams, can he help out? He also scored last week.
Yeah, I mean, this is who he is. He either catches a long touchdown, and you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad, or he doesn't, and you're like, what was I thinking? And again, there's nobody on bye this week. I hope you don't need Jameson Williams. I'm not starting him.
Even though he might technically be the number 2 receiver in Detroit, I really don't feel better about him than Romeo Doubs or Dontavian Wicks. So, desperation flex. Next game is the Commanders at the Cowboys. Well, let's start dissecting this Washington wide receiver core. Just, you never know what to expect. What about Terry McLaurin? He definitely let down last week. Any hope this week?
I don't think so. I saw a stat that, going back to last year, he hasn't had 90 or more receiving yards in a game in, a bunch of games. 10 games or something. Man, on the road against Dallas, I mean, he's not like a complete outright bench, but nothing more than start him if you need him.
Agree. Look, he couldn't do much against the Giants, now against the Cowboys. And we thought with Trevon Diggs out for the season, the secondary would be hurting. Oh no, they got Deron Bland, who looks just as good and is just such a bad spot. He's just flex if you need. And then Jahan Dotson, I've got to think he's pretty much the same.
Yeah, he feels kind of like, Romeo Dobbs to me, touchdown or bust, and you shouldn't need that this week, so I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I mean, your hope here, if you have one of these Washington receivers, is that the Cowboys are blowing him out, that Sam Howell throws it 50 times like he's done. But still, are you counting on that in your fantasy team? Hopefully not. On the other side, what about Brandon Cooks? He's been steadily more involved. Do you think he has a big game here?
I mean, it's a great matchup for him. They're at home. I certainly think he has upside, and by no means is he a guy you have to start, but if you need him, he's got upside.
Look, I'm going to want to start a lot of players against this Commanders defense. There's risk here with Cooks because, CeeDee Lamb is a target hog. They like to target the tight end in the red zone, but still, I think Cooks, I'll say out of all the receivers we've mentioned so far, he might be the one I like the best as a flex option. Are we going to go far enough to say Michael Gallup could be streamed because of the matchup?
I mean, he kind of feels like a slightly better Jameson Williams, but he probably needs a long touchdown, so not doing it this week.
He's not the worst as a potential, high upside flex, but again, not the best. And then the last of the Turkey Day matchups is the 49ers and the Seahawks. Well, let's start with Brandon Ayuk. I mean, you could make an argument that he's a no doubt most starter at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm quite ready to go there yet because it feels like every time he has like these big games and we're like, oh, he's there. Then he kind of has some, I guess not huge games, not terrible games, but not huge. I will say if there's a worry for Ayuk this week, it's that the Seahawks play a ton of zone. He's typically better against man, but he's also good against zone. So, yeah, Brandon Ayuk, you got him, start him.
Yeah, I mean, Ayuk has shown this year he's just good. And I don't know who you'd have to have for me to bench Ayuk, but I'm probably just not doing it. I know the matchup isn't as good as last week, but if I have Ayuk, I'm starting him. So what about Deebo Samuel? You just mentioned the zone coverage. Seahawks are one of the heaviest zone coverage teams, and Deebo tends to feast on that type of coverage. Does this mean a huge game for him?
I think it could be. Purdy's balling out. The offense is great. The team plays a ton of zone. I think we see a big Deebo week this week. Start him.
I mean, Deebo's a guy you pretty much want in your lineup for the most part because you never know when he'll have a big game. Well, this could be it. So I can't say, close your eyes and start him everywhere kind of play, but I'll take a chance with his upside. Now on the Seattle side, we got DK Metcalf. He's been coming on the last 2 weeks, but maybe concerned about Geno Smith with his injury. How do you view DK with this matchup also going against the Niners?
Yeah, look, Niners, they do still give up, yards to receivers, so there is still opportunity for him here. Obviously, it's going to depend on Geno Smith and how healthy he is. DK to me, kind of what he is every week. He's startable, and that's about as high as I can go.
Yeah, not convinced by the last couple of weeks. Well, I get there's risk here. There's always risk. Let's just get this out of the way with. If Geno Smith doesn't play and we have to see Drew Lock, let's just say real hard no to every Seattle receiver. If Geno plays, and it sounds like he might, I think DK Metcalf is still a good wide receiver 3 type because he always has that big play upside. And then Tyler Lockett, again, assuming Geno plays. Do you like him any better than DK?
Maybe slightly, but again, to me, he's just kind of startable.
Well, I mean, I think there's some potential here because, like you said, the Niners do give up some against the receivers. Maybe they're winning. Maybe Seattle has to chuck it a lot. Who knows? So risky, but still a solid wide receiver 3 option. Now, JSN, I will say I can't feel good enough about him this week. If I have Jackson Smith and Jigma on my bench, I'm probably keeping him on my bench.
Yeah, you shouldn't need him this week, not starting him.
And then on Friday, we're going to have NFL football, and it's the Dolphins at the Jets. So let's talk Jalen Waddle. When is it going to happen? When are we going to see the big breakout game from him this year? Is it going to be this week?
Yeah, we might not see it, and I don't think it's going to be this week. The reason why we might not see it is because it's hard to have a guy break out when the other guy's going for like 150, 200 yards every single game. So, and this is not a good spot. I know he's not going to get a ton of sauce, but their whole secondary is good. Jalen Waddle this week for me is only like a startable kind of guy.
Yeah, I've got to think there's something going on. I mean, sure, Tyreek Hill's getting a ton of yards, but there's plenty of targets to go around in this offense. There's no other receiver. There's no tight end. Anybody else who's getting a lot of targets. I think it's maybe he's just not right with his back or something. Look, if he can't smash against teams like the Raiders, the Panthers, why would he do it against the Jets on the road? So honestly, if I have Waddle, I'm probably benching unless I don't have anything better. And then Garrett Wilson, going to be really interesting this week because he finally gets a different quarterback. So what are you expecting from Wilson with Tim Boyle?
Who knows? I mean, Tim Boyle has 3 career touchdowns. I know everybody's complaining like, oh, Zach Wilson only has like 6 touchdowns this year. Well, Tim Boyle only has 3 in his entire career, and he's played like 18 games. I don't think it's any better. I don't think it gets any better with Tim Boyle. I mean, I can't believe they're going to Tim Boyle. If you need him, you can start him, but that's as high as I can go.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think if Boyle was better, they would have gone to him a while ago. I mean, I don't think it's worse or better. It's the same. I mean, Wilson is fine. He'll give you a floor in PPR, but that's about it. That makes him a flex option. 2 teams coming off the bye going to face each other. That's the Saints and the Falcons. So let's talk Chris Olave. How high can you be on him in this matchup? Again, assuming Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback.
Yeah, I'd actually like him better for this Jameis Winston, but it probably will be Derek Carr. We'll see. But not a great spot for him, honestly. A.J. Terrell's done a great job against the number 1 wide receivers. But I still think, for the most part, Chris Olave is a good start this week.
Yeah, Olave is one of those guys just is kind of hard to bench. I don't expect this to be his best week, but he'll still get you a few catches. Always potential for a touchdown, but I'm going to put him more kind of like the wide receiver 3 range in PPR. And then we've got to talk Rashid Shaheed. We know Michael Thomas out probably for a while with a knee injury. So does that mean an uptick in targets for Shaheed? And is it enough?
I mean, maybe an uptick in targets. Is it enough? Probably not, but he can always hit a home run. So if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, he's interesting as a flex play, but he's always going to be what he is. He's a high risk, potential high reward streamer. So if you need somebody with some upside, yeah, I think I like him a little better than usual, but I can't say that I love him. And it's hard to ever love a Falcons player in your lineup because, reasons. What about Drake London this week? What do we get?
I mean, who knows? But I will say, if there is a benefit for Drake London, it's that Marshawn Lattimore almost certainly not going to play. So he's not going to have to face Marshawn Lattimore at least, but it's the Falcons offense. It's Arthur Smith. If you need him, you can start him.
Right. Not the worst, not the best. He'll be fine. Who knows? Yeah. Risky wide receiver 3 as usual. Then we got the Steelers at the Bengals, which has devolved into a showdown between Kenny Pickett and Jake Browning. So maybe not a lot of points here. Let's start with Deontay Johnson. After 2 really good games, has now had 2 really miserable games. What do we do with him?
This passing offense, did you see every throws to the outside? Deontay Johnson was wide open for the game-winning touchdown, and Pickett didn't throw it to him. He said took the sack. Just cannot feel good about this passing attack. I can't do it. I can't start any Steeler wide receiver. I'm not doing it.
I mean, at this point, again, it's not Johnson's fault. It's not his health. It's nothing. It's the quarterback. I don't know how he's getting worse as the season goes on, but it's happening. So I guess at this point, until something changes, just don't start him. And that would also go for George Pickens. Again, all the talent in the world is just being wasted because Kenny Pickett cannot get the ball down the field. So too risky, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping for a long touchdown, but come on. Like, really? In this offense with Kenny Pickett? Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Now, here's the real question. And I guarantee we'll have 100 questions on Jamar Chase alone this week because you can't call him a must-start anymore without Joe Burrow. But can you consider benching Jamar Chase?
I don't think so, because, I mean, we've seen, Garrett Wilson has still been okay with Zach Wilson, and that's about as bad as it can get. Devontae Adams has been okay with Aiden O'Connell. I think Jamar Chase is talented enough, and he'll get enough of a target share that I think he's still startable this week.
Yeah, I'm really dropping him down more to the wide receiver 3 flex range, but still, there are a few receivers in that kind of area that I would, start over Chase. So you can't love him, but at the same time, I'm probably still starting him. And then it's early to say about T. Higgins, whether he's even going to be given a shot to play. If he does, can you consider him?
No, I mean, Chase, sure, he's probably going to get a ton of targets. Higgins coming back from injury with Jake Browning, no chance.
He's already been inconsistent and high-risk play with Joe Burrow. So without, no, I'm just not even going to think about it. What about Tyler Boyd? If Higgins is out. Boyd is technically the number 2 guy there, maybe.
I mean, look, Chase is already hard enough to start. I'm not starting any other Bengals pass catcher. No.
Gonna agree with you there. I mean, it's always hard to get excited about Boyd these days. This week, I'll just ignore him. The Jaguars are gonna take on the Houston Texans this week. It'll be a very interesting game. Let's start with Calvin Ridley. It happened. The breakout game, or I guess another good game for Calvin Ridley after so many disappointing ones. Can he follow it up?
Well, I'll say this for Calvin Ridley. I'm on the fence with him this week. I liked him last week. Now, and no, it was not because Zay Jones was healthy. It was because he was facing a soft Titan secondary that doesn't press very much. Well, now he's facing a Houston secondary that plays a ton of zone, does not press very much, but they're very good as well. They don't give up a lot. I know they gave up that one deep ball to Rondale Moore last week, but that was it. They do not give up a lot to wide receivers. So I think this week Calvin Ridley is just going to be like okay. So if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, I'm not going to call a big Ridley game again. I mean, like you said, this is a different matchup. You can start him still, but for the most part, I probably won't unless I need to. So then what does that mean for Christian Kirk? Is this the kind of matchup where he benefits?
So, see, I don't really feel great about Christian Kirk either this week because he typically does better against man coverage, and Houston plays a lot of zone. But he's been good. He's still involved. It's not the best spot, but not the worst spot. But I can only this week put him in like the startable range.
Well, a little bit higher on Kirk because, again, if Ridley's not getting it done, I think Kirk will have to. I mean, look at the way Houston's offense has been rolling at home. I feel like they're going to need to pass it enough. I like Kirk. I don't love him this week, but I think he's still kind of like that wide receiver 2 range for me. And then Zay Jones did play last week, but is he on the radar?
No. I mean, no, not this week. No.
No, agree. I'm not considering him. All right, now, all the Texans receivers. Let's start with Tank Dell. I mean, at this point, we have to consider whether we even think about starting him or just put him in your lineup and forget about it.
I think you got to just put him in your lineup. It's the Jaguars. They're a pass funnel. You got to keep rolling with Tank Dell.
Agree. I'm not going to question it. There's no reason to. If you got Tank Dell, just keep going with him. Now, what about Nico Collins? Not a huge game last week, but it was come off injury. Is he better this week?
I mean, maybe. He did have 2 chances in the end zone. One was intercepted and one was pretty much thrown where he couldn't catch it. But, he still was solid last week. It's a good matchup. I think he's still startable.
Yeah, I think I feel pretty good. Again, at home, Jaguars give up a lot of passing yardage. They might have to pass it a lot. And I think he'll be a little bit healthier coming off that injury, so no performance dip. I like Nico. I think he's a good start. Now, Noah Brown, who had been great for a couple of weeks, missed last week with an injury. If he's back, we consider him too.
I think I can put him in the if you need him, you can start him category because it is a good matchup for these receivers, and they're at home.
Well, look, if he was looking like a strong start last week before he missed, I think we have to consider him in the same way. The matchup and everything still favors this whole receiving core. I mean, I'm sure they won't all go off, but I think I want to take a chance here. So I will say Noah Brown looks like a strong flex option. Next up is the Bucs at the Colts. Let's start with Mike Evans.
I mean, how do you sit Mike Evans at this point? He's mostly been good to great this year. You got to start him.
I'm not sitting Mike Evans, and in this matchup against Indianapolis, I'm definitely starting Mike Evans, and I feel like even though it didn't happen last week, I think this could be a big Mike Evans week. Now, Chris Godwin, always a solid start, but he hasn't really been putting up numbers the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he feels kind of like he's startable, but you just don't know if you're going to get that big game or not. But, it's not a bad matchup. He's at least startable.
Right. In this matchup, I feel okay about him. He's been more inconsistent. Hard to say what you're going to get, but he's still a good option. And then there's Michael Pittman. I mean, again, going against this Tampa Bay secondary, I feel like he's almost an auto start.
Yeah, Michael Pittman, to me, I feel like he's one of the most underrated players in fantasy and maybe even in real life. You got Pittman, you start him.
And then since the Colts were on bye last week, a lot of people forgot about Josh Downs because he had been hurt. Hadn't done much lately, but before that, he was great. So if Downs is a full go this week, can you consider him?
Yeah, I think you can. It's a Bucs secondary. That shouldn't scare you. I don't feel good about him as I do Pittman, of course, but I think he's still, if you need him, you can start him this week.
Well, I know it's more your thing, but if I'm going to say one of my favorite sneaky starts this week, it is Downs. Like I said, he's been a forgotten about player. He was great when he was healthy. So if he is good to go for week 12 against Tampa Bay, I think he's a strong flex. Next up, we got the Patriots at the Giants. Surprisingly, not a lot of wide receivers to talk about here, but let's talk about Pop. Demario Douglas is the number one target there for New England. Can he have some fantasy relevance?
Yeah, I think he at least gives you a decent floor in PPR leagues. So if you need him, you can start him.
I mean, he's been good. The question is, who's going to be throwing to him this week? We honestly don't even know at this point because considering benching Mac Jones, is that even going to be good? I don't know. I don't think the ceiling is high enough. It's a great matchup, but I think he's just a flex if you need. Another game that might not have a lot of fireworks in the passing game, that's the Panthers at the Titans. But there's Adam Thielen. He's still putting up fancy points. Is he a solid start?
Yeah, in this matchup against the Titans, he at least has a good floor, so he's startable.
He's getting a ton of targets. This is a pretty soft secondary, so I think you should feel pretty good about Thielen, at least as a floor play in PPR. And then there's DeAndre Hopkins. Well, he did come through with a long touchdown again last week. Do you think he can do it against the Panthers?
Yeah, long touchdown on a trick play. I mean, this offense isn't any better with Will Levis than it was with Tannehill. It's the same terrible offense. It might even be worse. I really think Mike Vrabel has actually quit on this season. Like, usually the players quit on the coach. I think the coach has actually quit on himself this year. I'm not starting D-Hop.
I mean, it is what it is. You hope for a long touchdown or you get nothing. So if you need somebody with upside, I don't mind him in this matchup. But again, hopefully you don't need him. Next up is the Rams at the Cardinals. Let's talk about Cooper Kupp. Left with that ankle injury, going to be iffy for this coming week. So if he plays, do you trust him?
I honestly don't think I can. I know it's Cooper Kupp. I know it's hard to bench him, but I mean, he wasn't good before the bye. Then he re-injures the ankle, the same ankle. I know it's a good matchup. It's Cooper Kupp, but man, it's so much risk here. I would just rather have him on my bench and see what he does.
Yeah, this is really going to come down to who else do you have. I mean, if you have a strong option, I think it's okay to bench Kupp. But for the most part, I don't know. He's one of those guys I feel like if he's out there, I still want to keep him in my lineup. But this is going to be a really kind of game time decision here. And then let's talk Puka Nacua. I mean, I think a lot of his value depends on whether Kupp plays or not.
I really like Puka a lot this week, whether Kupp plays or not. Arizona plays a ton of zone. That's where Puka feasts. We saw it last week against Seattle. Granted, it was without Kupp, but against that zone, had a good game. I think he has another good game this week. I think Puka is a very good start.
Yeah, I'm going to agree there because, like you said, even if Kupp does play, it's not like Puka's not getting targeted and he could still have some success. So I'll agree. I'm higher on Puka now than I was last week. I think he's going to be a very solid start. Now, on the other side, there's Marquise Brown. I mean, I know people are complaining about the targets not being there, but I will say that just watching him play last week just did not look right. He looked confused and sluggish. I don't know what is going on there, but I'm out on Marquise Brown until I see something different.
Yeah, I mean, definitely worried for Marquise Brown right now. I don't know what's going on. I can only put him in the start him if you need him category.
And then there's Rondell Moore. Did score in a fairly long touchdown. Didn't do much else. What do you think about him?
Yeah, one long touchdown and then did nothing. I mean, good luck with that again. I'm not starting him.
Yeah, I mean, sure, he could have a play like that, but I don't chase that type of productivity in my lineup. I'd rather go for a guy who I know is getting touches, so Rondell Moore is probably not starting for me. Now we got the Browns taking on the Broncos in Mile High. Start with Amari Cooper, lead guy there for Cleveland.
Yeah, I cannot start Amari Cooper. I mean, he was like okay last week, I guess. He was better than I thought he would be, which is kind of saying something because he still didn't do a lot. Now he's going to get Patrick Surtain on the road? No way. No way.
Oh, I mean, if you didn't start Amari Cooper, you're not sad. 4 catches, 34 yards. Yeah, we were telling everyone to sit Amari, and nobody's regretting that. You definitely need to sit Amari this week because, again, the situation is not good there, but also it's not a good matchup. And I'll tell you what, besides keeping him on your bench, in your fantasy lineup, I'm also going lower on underdog pick'ems. You know, if you're on underdog, that they put these lines out early and you can take advantage of some of these more opportunistic ones. So Amari Cooper, 44 seems pretty low, but he had less than that last week and the week before. And in this matchup with the Broncos, he's going to be covered by one of the best corners in the league. I don't see much opportunity for him. He's getting low A-dot throws. Yeah, I'm going Amari Cooper lower than 44.5 receiving yards right now. And you are new to Underdog, and if you just sign up right now, you can pair that pick with that new customer special of Christian McCaffrey going higher than half a yard, and that looks like a pretty favorable pick. Now, we should talk about Elijah Moore because he actually led the team in receiving last week. He got 6 catches for 60 yards. Is that enough, though?
I mean, yeah, that was a much better matchup. This is the Broncos. Say what you want about this defense. They have a good secondary. They don't give up a lot, through the air. It's mostly on the ground. I can't do it with Elijah Moore this week.
No, you're relying on that volume. I don't see any upside for a big game here, so agree. I think he's just kind of a desperation flex. Now on the Denver side, there's Cortland Sutton. Caught that really impressive game-winning touchdown. I just can't stop scoring touchdowns. He's kind of like the wide receiver equivalent of Gus Edwards.
That's a good comp for sure. But I have my doubts this week. This Browns defense. I know they give up that 75-yard touchdown to Jaylen Warren, which is incredibly random, but they are historically great on defense. If you need them, you can start them, but that's about as high as I can go this week.
Yeah. Again, always going to feel a little bit better about him in non-PPR leagues, but the ceiling just isn't as high. I mean, sure, maybe he scores another touchdown, but still, that's kind of all you're getting. I really am scared of this Browns defense like you. So you can start him as long as you don't expect too much. And then what do you expect from Jerry Jeudy?
This week, not a lot in this matchup. Not starting Jerry Jeudy.
I never expect too much from Jeudy, and I'm usually not disappointed with the outcome in that case. Against the Browns, no, there's no way. Then we got the Chiefs at the Raiders. So let's start with the number one guy there, Rashee Rice. Does he take advantage of this matchup?
I mean, who knows? He kind of is the same guy every week. You really need a touchdown or bust here. Yeah, again, I don't think you need that kind of guy this week. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, he's kind of gradually become less exciting as the season goes on. Just not enough volume there, but also the Raiders, people might not realize they're really not that bad against wide receivers. So Rice is a guy I'd prefer to sit. Now what about Devontae Adams? I mean, I know with the rookie quarterback you can't set and forget anymore, but are you considering not starting him?
No, I mean, it's not a great matchup against this Chiefs secondary, but he's still Devontae Adams. He's going to get a ton of targets. I think he's still a good start.
Yeah, I'm really not worried about it anymore after the last 2 weeks where we see he's getting a ton of targets, doing Devontae Adams things. I mean, if I have Devontae, I'm just keeping him in my lineup. Now, Jacoby Myers, a different story.
I mean, he did explode for 4 catches last week, which is 2 more than he's had in any other game with Aiden O'Connell, so there's that. But that's not enough to start him.
Now, he's not getting nearly as many first-read targets as he did with Jimmy Garoppolo. Upside just isn't there. I think you should probably sit Myers. Buffalo Bills will take on the Philadelphia Eagles this week. Should be an interesting game. Now, I think you're still starting Stephon Diggs, even though you're worried about him. Don't worry. What about Gabe Davis, though?
Well, you know how I feel about Gabe Davis, but I will say, if there's going to be a Gabe Davis week, this could be it. The Eagles do give up a lot to receivers. They give up big plays, so if you want to gamble on him, this might be the week to do it.
Yeah, look, makes sense. Much better than going against the Jets. I mean, who knows? This new offensive philosophy doesn't seem to really want to throw the ball too much down the field. Very risky, as usual. So if you need a home run upside, sure. And then there's Devontae Smith. Always has home run upside. You think he can do it in this week?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if Dallas Goedert plays or not. I don't think he will. So I think Devonta Smith, it's not a tough matchup. This secondary, look, it's gotten better. They have some playmakers, but I still think Devonta Smith a good start this week.
Yeah, he's never a bad start. Always has that upside. For the most part, if you have Smith, you should start him. Night game on Sunday will be the Ravens at the Chargers. Let's talk Odell Beckham. I mean, I think finally can say you should be picking him up. He's worth starting as well too, I think, in this matchup. I mean, you go flex or even higher on him?
Yeah, I don't think I could put him higher than that. But look, Chargers, one of these defenses you want to play pass catchers against. So I think this week, if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get carried away. He'll never be Odell Beckham from like the New York days, but I mean, you can't ignore the fact that he's been producing and Mark Andrews is out. I like Odell Beckham this week. Now, Zay Flowers also is definitely worth considering. I mean, how high do you feel on him?
I like Zay Flowers this week. I know you look at it, you're like, well, he didn't do much again last week, but he had a long touchdown called back on a dubious holding call there. So against the Chargers, I'll start Zay Flowers this week.
Yeah, this is a defense to try to exploit. Again, no Mark Andrews, good for all the pass catchers. This turns into a shootout. Zay Flowers could have a big game. I say for him a big game. So I like Flowers enough to say he can be flexed. And then for the Chargers, well, let's talk about Quentin Johnson, who didn't have a big touchdown call back. He had a big touchdown that he just flat out dropped. I mean, look, I'll just say this. I regret now recommending him. I'm out on Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, if you weren't out before, you've got to be out now. This is pretty brutal. Can't start him.
Then on Monday night, we have matchup of the NFC North, the Bears at the Vikings. DJ Moore, I mean, I think it's safe to say that connection is back. Is he a guy you just have to start?
Yeah, against the Vikings secondary, you have to start. Find a way to get DJ Moore in your lineups this week.
Absolutely. Have to start. There's no question. Kind of regret not saying you had to start him last week. There were still some questions as far as Fields, but those were answered. But then we don't know about Jordan Addison. If JJ plays, do you still play Addison too? If he doesn't, is that good? Well, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been good for Addison with Dobbs. It's been okay. Last week wasn't great. Bears secondary, it's been better. It's not elite, but it's been better. I think Addison can only put him in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think this might even be better for him if JJ does play because less attention in general, but still, I think he's just kind of a risky flex. All right, now you know what to do at wide receiver for week 12. What about all the other positions? Don't worry, we got you covered. Check out this playlist with everything you need to know to win in fantasy.